"Where's my boat?" I shouted it into an empty boathouse, the kind of shout that comes out before your brain even catches up with what your eyes are telling you. The slip was empty. Water lapping against the pilings where the Carol Ann should have been tied up, rocking gentle the way she always did. 41 feet of teak and fiberglass that I'd spent 11 years bringing back from a rotted-out hull somebody left to die in a boneyard outside Beaufort. Gone. Just gone. Like she'd never existed at all. That's when my grandson walked out from behind the tool shed. Tyler, 23 years old, wearing a shirt I didn't recognize, and a look on his face like he'd been caught eating the last piece of pie, not like he'd just erased 11 years of my life. He had the spare key ring in his hand, my spare key ring, the one with the little anchor charm Carol Ann bought me the year before she passed. He looked at me, didn't blink. "I sold her, Grandpa." Said it flat, like he was telling me he'd mowed the lawn. "Brianna needed the money for her salon. I figured you'd get it eventually." I felt something crack open in my chest that I don't have a word for. Not anger. Not yet. Something underneath anger. He'd sold the last thing that still had her fingerprints on it, and he'd done it for a beauty salon. He had no idea, standing there in my driveway with that spare key dangling from his finger, that he'd just lost something a whole lot bigger than a boat. My name's Harold Whitfield. I'm 68 years old, and for 32 years I ran a marine diesel repair shop down on the Beaufort waterfront before I finally hung it up. I've spent my whole life around boats, building them, fixing them, listening to them the way some men listen to a car engine and know exactly what's wrong before they even pop the hood. What I never learned, not in 68 years, was how fast blood can turn into a stranger. It took my own grandson about 4 seconds to teach me that. If you'd sat me down a month before this happened and told me Tyler would do something like this, I'd have laughed you out of the room. That's the part I keep chewing on, if I'm honest with you. Not the money, the disbelief. The gap between the boy I thought I knew and the man standing in my driveway that morning. My wife Carol Ann died of pancreatic cancer 4 years back. 6 weeks from diagnosis to the funeral. Fast the way some cancers are fast. Like the disease itself knew it didn't have long and wanted to get its business done quick. Before she got sick, we used to sit out on the back porch with a legal pad between us, making a list. Not a bucket list, she hated that phrase, said it sounded like something off a game show. She called it the list, like it was the only one that mattered. The intercoastal waterway, start to finish, the Chesapeake in the fall. Down through the Keys in winter, when everybody up north was freezing, retirement came for me. Carol Ann didn't get to come with it. For almost 11 years before that, I'd been quietly setting money and time aside for a boat that could actually make that trip. No new truck, no golf club membership like my neighbor Ed kept pestering me about. Every spare dollar and every spare Saturday went into that hull I found rotting in a yard outside town. My brother thought I was out of my mind, sinking money into a wreck instead of just buying something off a lot. He didn't understand. That boat wasn't a purchase. It was a promise I'd made to a woman who wasn't around anymore to see if I kept it. I rebuilt her engine myself. New wiring, new plumbing, a whole new deck. I laid board by board on Sunday afternoons with sawdust in my eyebrows, same as I used to get in the shop. I kept Carol Ann's chipped enamel coffee cup bolted into a little cabinet by the galley stove. Her cardigan stayed folded on the bench seat in the cabin. Her photograph, the one from our honeymoon, squinting into the sun on some pier in Charleston, I'd screwed into a little brass frame above the chart table so she'd still be riding along in her way. Some evenings I'd just climb aboard after supper, sit in the captain's chair, and imagine the whole route laid out ahead of me like a story I hadn't finished reading yet. 4 days before everything came apart, I drove up to Wilmington for a reunion with some of the old boys from the Union Hall, men I'd worked alongside on marine engines for 3 decades. Before I left, I handed Tyler my spare set of keys. "Just keep an eye on things," I told him. "Check the bilge pump once, make sure she's not taking on water." He said, "No problem, Grandpa." 4 words. I had no idea those 4 words would cost me 11 years of my life. When I pulled back into the marina parking lot that Thursday afternoon, something felt wrong before I'd even cut the engine. The slip looked wrong. Too much open water where there should have been a hull. I told myself somebody must have moved her over for dock maintenance. I walked the whole finger pier twice. Nothing. I checked with the harbor master's office. Nobody had logged any maintenance work that week. Panic climbed up my spine before my mind even caught up with what my eyes were telling me. I called Tyler. It rang 4 times before he picked up. Silence on the line first, then, "I'll be right there." He showed up 20 minutes later with Brianna riding shotgun in his truck, climbing out in sunglasses that cost more than my first car, carrying a handbag I'd never seen before. Tyler wouldn't look at me straight on. Finally, he just said it. I sold her. Those words landed like somebody'd hit me with a 2x4. You what? I said. Brianna needed $22,000 for her salon lease, he said, like that was supposed to make it make sense. Brianna crossed her arms. I've been talking about this for a year, Harold, she said. First name, no respect in it at all. It's just an old boat. It's not a boat, I told her. It's the only thing I've got left of my wife's dreams. Whatever, she said. Tyler rubbed the back of his neck the way he used to when he was 10 and got caught lying about homework he hadn't finished. Grandpa, you weren't even using her that week. I told him I'd been gone 4 days. He said, You'll live. I want to tell you the truth, the way I'd want anybody telling me the truth about themselves if I'd been in his shoes. Watching my own grandfather's face break the way mine must have broken right then, I don't know how I'd have lived with saying what he said next, but he said it anyway. We needed the money. No, I said quiet as I could manage. You wanted it. Neither one of them had an answer for that. A couple of the other boat owners were pretending not to watch from their own slips. Nobody said a word out loud. Somehow that silence sat heavier on me than any shouting match would have. I walked into the little dockside shed where I kept my tools without saying another word. Tyler followed me in, saying, Come on, Grandpa, like I was the unreasonable one in all this. I opened up the toolbox and found the spiral notebook where I'd logged every part, every receipt, every hour I'd put into that hull. 11 years. Hundreds of quiet evenings. For about 2 seconds, something in Tyler's face went soft. Then Brianna hollered from the truck that they had somewhere to be, and his face hardened right back up. Life goes on, he said, and they left. I sat in that tool shed until the light went orange and then blue and then gone. I wasn't angry by the time the sun went down. I was just hollowed out. The house felt too big when I finally drove home. Too quiet. Carol Ann's photograph sat on my kitchen windowsill, same as always, smiling like she didn't know yet. I finally kept the promise. I whispered at her picture. And now it's gone. That hurt worse than I expected. Not the money, the fact that somebody I helped raise looked at my wife's dream and decided it was his to cash in without so much as asking. If you've ever stood across from somebody who's supposed to protect you and watched them look straight through you like your furniture, you already know exactly what that particular silence feels like. It doesn't shout. It just sits on your chest like a wet sandbag. Around 7 that night, I called my insurance man, hoping for some kind of quick answer. He told me that because Tyler had legitimate access to the property, and, as far as anybody could prove, my authorization, this might land in civil court instead of criminal. Then I called the sheriff's department out of pure stubbornness. The deputy who came out was polite, patient, and about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. If your grandson had permission to be on the property and access to the vessel, he said, careful with every word, this might need to go through an attorney rather than us. Attorney, civil matter. None of those words belonged anywhere near the last promise I had left to keep. At 8:15 that night, my phone rang. Caller ID showed a name I didn't recognize, Coastal Carolina Yacht Sales. I almost let it go to voicemail. Something made me answer instead. This is Harold, I said. Mr. Whitfield, a young voice said, nervous right out of the gate. My name's Dennis. I'm the sales manager here. I'm calling about your vessel. My stomach dropped clean through the floor. I know, I said. There was a long pause on his end. Sir, he said, dropping his voice almost to a whisper, you left something aboard her. I frowned so hard it hurt. I cleared her out before my trip, I told him. There shouldn't be anything left on that boat. It was hidden, he said. Hidden, I repeated back at him, like the word might make more sense the second time. I think you need to come down here, he said. I don't remember much of the drive out to that dealership. I remember my hands white on the wheel, and every red light in Beaufort feeling like it lasted an hour. Dennis's voice kept looping through my head. You left something aboard her, and it was hidden, and none of it made a lick of sense to me. The dealership sat right on the water, past a row of used center consoles with faded price stickers, the office lights already dimmed for closing. Dennis met me at the door, before I'd even shut off my truck. He looked younger than I'd pictured on the phone, maybe 35, clean cut, clearly not comfortable in his own skin right then. Mr. Whitfield, he said, I'm real sorry about all this. Can I see her? I asked. Not yet, he said. There's something you should see first. He walked me back through a covered work bay, and there she was, up on blocks under the fluorescent lights. Seeing her again nearly stopped my heart in my chest. The little brass bell I'd mounted by the wheel still hung there. The teak I'd sanded by hand still glowed under those cold shop lights. She looked exactly the way I'd left her 4 days earlier. I put my hand flat against her hull before I could stop myself. "I'm sorry," I whispered at her, like she could hear me. 2 mechanics stood off toward the back. One of them, an older fellow with grease under every fingernail and a gray beard down to his collar, walked over. "You Harold?" he asked. I nodded. "You did some beautiful work on this, old girl," he said. I thanked him, my voice not quite steady. "We almost missed it," he said. "Missed what?" I asked. "The compartment," he said. "Come on aboard." We climbed up together. The older mechanic knelt down by the settee in the main cabin, lifted the cushion, and pried up a section of teak flooring I had never once noticed in 11 years of rebuilding that boat inch by inch with my own 2 hands. Underneath was a narrow, stainless box, bolted flush into the hull. "I've owned this boat over a decade," I said. "I had no idea that was in there." Dennis unlocked it with a small key sitting right beside it. "Had to drill the original lock to get in," he said, and lifted the lid careful, like it might bite him. For a second, none of us said a word. The first thing I recognized was my wife's handwriting. Not because anybody told me, because there was an envelope sitting right on top, with my name written across the front in her hand. Harold. My heart just stopped dead in my chest. I reached in with fingers that wouldn't hold still. A leather-bound logbook, a folded nautical chart, soft at every crease from being handled so many times. A stack of old photographs, and underneath all of it, a thick envelope sealed with a smear of dark blue wax, and across the front, in Carol Ann's careful hand, "For when you're finally ready." I couldn't breathe. Dennis and the old mechanic stepped off the boat quiet and left me alone with it. Only sound left was the tide slapping against the hull and my own pulse in my ears. I opened the logbook first. Page after page in her handwriting anchorages, little waterfront diners, lighthouses she'd read about. Beside almost every stop she'd written little notes, half to herself, half to me. "Best hush puppies on the whole coast, right here. Harold will want to stay 2 nights, not 1. Watch the sunrise from this exact spot, don't let him rush it." Halfway through I had to stop reading because the words wouldn't hold still on the page anymore. Carol Ann had planned this whole trip years before her diagnosis, and she'd never once stopped believing we'd actually make it. Neither had I. I just hadn't known she'd left proof of that belief hidden inside my own boat. If you've ever found something a person you loved left behind for you, something they never got the chance to hand you themselves, you know there's no bracing yourself for it. It just arrives whenever it decides to, ready or not. A soft knock came from the cabin doorway. Dennis stood there. "Sorry to interrupt," he said. I wiped my eyes and asked him how in the world they'd even found that compartment. Our inspection tech noticed the sole sounded hollow in one spot. He said, "We figure the original builder put it in decades back. Then we found all this." He nodded toward the logbook in my lap. "Figured it belonged to somebody who loved this boat a great deal." "You'd be right," I told him. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Why didn't the buyer just take her and go?" "Because once we found that compartment," Dennis said, "we had to stop the whole transaction. State law, we're required to report any personal property found aboard before we can finalize a sale." "So the paperwork's not finished?" I said. "It's not," he said. "The buyer never officially took possession." For the first time since Tyler's confession, I felt something in me besides pure grief. Small, fragile, but real. Then Dennis said, "There's something else, Mr. Whitfield. Your grandson wasn't listed as an owner on the title." I just looked at him. "He wasn't," I said. "No, sir. Everything on file shows sole ownership in your name." "That's me," I said. "Exactly," Dennis said. "He presented paperwork with what looked like your signature." "I never signed anything," I told him. His face went serious in a hurry. "I was afraid you'd say that," he said. A chill ran clean through me. Forgery. The word settled into my chest like a stone dropped in still water. My own grandson hadn't just broken my trust. He might have broken the law doing it. "I don't want him arrested," I told Dennis right off the bat. "I understand," he said, gentle about it. "But we have to protect everybody involved here, including the buyer. He's not happy, understandably. Put down a deposit and everything. We've frozen the whole sale while this gets sorted." "So she's still mine," I said. "As far as we're concerned, yes, sir." I closed my eyes right there in that captain's chair, and for the first time all day, I actually let myself breathe. Next morning, I sat across a desk from an attorney named Renata Cole, a woman who'd spent better than 25 years untangling exactly this kind of family knot. She listened without cutting in once, took her notes, and when I finished talking, she set her pen down and looked at me steady. "Harold, I'm not out to destroy my own grandson," I told her before she could even ask. "I just want my boat back." "I think you'll get her back," she said. "Tyler, that depends on what you decide to do next." "I don't follow," I told her. "You've got every legal right to pursue this as criminal," she said. I looked down at the floor a good while. "He's still my daughter's boy," I said. She didn't argue with that, just asked me one question. "What would Carol Ann want you to do?" I already knew the answer before she'd finished getting the question out. She'd want accountability, not ruin. Renata smiled just a touch, like she'd expected exactly that. "Then let's get your property back first," she said. "And after that, we give your grandson one real chance to tell the truth before the law does it for him." Walking back to my truck, my phone rang. Tyler. I watched his name sit there on the screen a long moment before I answered. "Grandpa," he said, voice already shaking some. "I think we've got a problem." I stood in that parking lot watching a couple of gulls fight over a dropped French fry, and it struck me how strange it is that the world just keeps right on turning even when yours has stopped cold. "What kind of problem?" I asked, calm as I could manage. "The dealership called," he said. "Sales on hold." "I imagine it is," I told him. "They're saying I wasn't allowed to sell her," he said. "They'd be right about that," I said. Long, quiet stretch on the line. For the first time since he'd confessed out on the dock, my grandson actually sounded uncertain of himself. "Grandpa, can we talk?" he asked. "Not today," I said, and ended the call before he could hand me some excuse I wasn't ready to hear yet. Not because I hated him, because I wasn't ready. Over the next few days, folks around the marina started leaving little things on my porch the way people do down here when they can tell something's happened even if nobody's said what. My neighbor Ed came by one evening with 2 collapsible fishing chairs under his arm. "You busy?" he asked. I told him I supposed not. "Come on then, let's go catch absolutely nothing," he said, and for the first time in a week I actually laughed a little. We sat on the bank of the Newport River a couple hours watching shrimp boats work the channel, and Ed finally spoke up. "My boy stole from me once," he said. I looked over at him, surprised as anything. "Most people don't know that," he said. "Spent 10 years trying to punish him for it. Didn't work." I asked him what did work. "I stopped trying to win," he said. "He had to lose it all on his own." That sat with me a long while after we packed up our gear. Meanwhile, Tyler kept calling, sometimes twice a day. I let most of them ring through. Renata told me the buyer had lawyered up wanting his full deposit back, that the dealership agreed he was owed every dime of it, and that Tyler had already spent the money and had no way on earth to return it. On Friday, my niece Callie phoned to tell me, hesitating some before she got into it, that she'd seen Brianna at a nail salon downtown, showing pictures of the boat around to whoever'd listen, telling people, and I'm quoting Callie here, that sometimes old men just don't know what's good for their own money anymore. I sat with that a minute, not angry exactly, understanding, maybe for the first time, that none of this had ever really been about any salon lease at all. That evening, Tyler showed up at my door looking like he'd aged 5 years in 1 week. Dark circles, wrinkled shirt, 3 days of stubble. "I know you don't want to see me," he said. I didn't answer that, just asked him what he needed. "They want the money back," he said. "I know," I told him. "I can't pay it," he said. "I already gave Brianna most of it." "How much?" I asked. 19,000, he said. Rest went on credit cards. "And the salon?" I asked. "It's not actually happening yet," he admitted. I looked at him a long time. "I've got one question," I said. He nodded, eager, like a question was something he could survive just fine. "When you sold that boat," I said, "did it ever once cross your mind to call me first?" His mouth opened, then shut again. Finally he whispered, "No." That answer hurt worse than every other part combined. Not because he'd admitted it, because he'd told me the truth for once. "I don't know what happened to me," he said quiet. "I do," I told him. "You stopped seeing me as your grandfather. You started seeing me as an obstacle." His eyes filled up. "I never meant," he started. "I believe you," I told him. "You never meant for it to get this bad. But you meant to sell my wife's dream." He didn't have anything left to argue with after that. Monday morning, Renata called before I'd finished my first cup of coffee. "Good news," she said. "The dealership's internal review is done, They've officially voided the sale. She's still mine, I said. She is, Renata said. But there's one more thing. The buyer wants to meet you. Why? I asked. He wouldn't say exactly, she said. Just that after hearing the whole story, there's something he wants you to hear in person. At 2 that afternoon, I sat down across from a man about my own age, silver hair, sun-weathered hands, a faded navy ball cap. His name was Rufus Delgado. He stood up the second I walked in. I owe you an apology, he said before I'd even taken my seat. For what? I asked. I almost bought your boat, he said. Been hunting for a good trawler for 2 years. When your grandson brought her in, I fell for her right off. Whoever restored that hull cared about her. That was me, I told him. When the dealership called and explained everything, he said. I wasn't angry. I was disappointed, not over losing the boat, because I realized somebody stole another old man's last dream right out from under him. Those words landed harder than I expected them to. A total stranger understood something my own grandson hadn't managed to yet. Rufus slid a small photograph across the table. Think this belongs to you, he said. It was Carol Ann, standing on the dock beside our boat not long after we'd bought her, laughing, wind pulling her hair sideways, a folded chart in one hand. I'd been wondering for weeks where that picture had gotten to. My wife passed 3 years back, Rufus said quiet. Heart. I told him I was sorry. So am I, he said. We were supposed to run the whole coast together, Maine down to Key West. Carol Ann and I had said almost the exact same thing about our own trip, once. Grief recognizes its own kind, turns out, no matter whose it is. He shook my hand before he left. Hope you finish your trip, he said. That evening I finally sat down with Carol Ann's sealed envelope. I'd carried it around 2 full days, scared to open it, scared it would feel like losing her all over again. I cracked the wax with my thumbnail. My dearest Harold, it began. If you're reading this, one of 2 things has happened. Either we finally cast off together and you're teasing me for packing too many paperbacks, or I'm not sitting next to you anymore. I laughed right through the tears. That was her, exactly. Always did pack too many books. Don't stay tied up at that dock forever, she'd written. I know you. You'll tell yourself you're honoring me by never leaving the water we knew together. But memories don't live in a marina slip. They travel with the people who keep loving. I had to stop reading a minute. 4 years, and I'd barely taken that boat past the Sound. Not because I couldn't, because I hadn't wanted to leave the water that still held her. Take the trip, she'd written. Watch the sunrise somewhere you've never anchored before. Eat bad seafood at some gas station diner. Stop at every lighthouse, even the boring ones. Talk to strangers on the dock. They'll turn into stories later. Then I got to the paragraph that changed something in me for good. If somebody ever hurts you after I'm gone, promise me one thing. Don't let bitterness be the last gift they leave sitting in your heart. Hold people accountable. Protect yourself. But don't make anger your home port. Forgiveness isn't pretending nothing happened. It's refusing to let somebody else's worst decision become the whole story of your future. I read that 4 times over. Truer every single time. The last page held only a short line. When you're finally underway, talk to me sometimes. I won't answer the way I used to, but I think you'll know I'm listening anyway. I folded that letter careful. For the first time since Tyler's confession out on that dock, I didn't feel eaten up by betrayal anymore. I missed my wife worse than I had in years, right in that moment. But somehow I also felt closer to her than I had in a long, long while. If you've ever lost somebody who left a piece of themselves behind for exactly the moment you'd need it most, you know there's no preparing for that either. It just finds you when it's ready. Next morning, Tyler called again. Can I come by? He asked. Why? I asked. I need to tell you something, he said. Brianna lied to me. About what? I asked. The salon, he said. There was never even a lease, never a real plan. My stomach knotted right back up. What happened to the money? I asked. I gave it to her, he said. Trusted her with it. I think she spent most of it already. The whole picture was coming clear now. This had never been about a salon. Never had been, not once. Before he hung up, Tyler asked one more thing, quiet and small. If you were me, he said, struggling to even get the words out, is there any way to fix this? I looked over at Carol Ann's letter, still sitting open on my kitchen table. You don't start by figuring out how to fix the money, I told him. You start by fixing the man who thought it was fine to steal from his own grandfather. The line went quiet a long moment. For the first time, I believed he'd actually heard me. He didn't call for several days after that. Then Renata phoned with an update. "Everything's settled," she said. "The boat's yours free and clear." "I can bring her home?" I asked. "You can," she said. "One more thing, though. Brianna went down to the dealership herself, demanding they release that deposit money. They told her the sale was void. She wasn't happy. Threatened to sue half the county." "Some people never stop digging," I said, "even after they've already fallen clean into the hole." That afternoon I drove out to the dealership myself. The whole shop crew greeted me like an old friend. "Told you he'd come back for her," the older mechanic hollered, patting the hull like it was a horse. Dennis walked over with a thick folder, had me sign the last of the paperwork, then handed me my keys. "Welcome home," he said. I climbed aboard. Everything smelled exactly the way I'd left it. Carol Ann's cardigan still folded on the bench, her coffee cup still bolted into its little cabinet, her photograph still watching from above the chart table. I put both hands on the wheel and whispered, "I'm coming, just not today." I wanted the first mile of that trip to start with a peaceful heart, not one still dragging unfinished business behind it. When I pulled into my own driveway, Tyler's truck was already sitting out front. He was on my porch steps, alone, no Brianna. "Heard you got her back," he said as I climbed down. "I did," I told him. "Looks good," he said. "Always did," I answered. Neither of us moved for a second. Then he said it plain. "She's gone, packed up and left this morning." He laughed once, bitter about it. Guess I wasn't much use to her without $22,000. The joke fell flat between us. He looked worn clean through. Not the tired kind of worn, the other kind. "Come inside," I told him. We sat at the same kitchen table where he'd first admitted what he'd done. The quiet between us felt different this time. Before, it had been full of his own certainty he was right. Now it carried something closer to shame. And shame, I've come to learn, is at least honest. "I found the bank statements," he said, staring down into his coffee. "The salon?" I asked. "Never booked. Never real," he said. "She moved most of the money into an account of her own. 16,000 of it. Rest went to clothes, a weekend trip with her friends." "I sold your dream," he said, "for handbags." No grandfather wants to hear that. No grandfather wants it to be true, either. He reached into his jacket and set a small ring box on the table. "That's my watch fund," he said. "I'm selling the truck too, my motorcycle, whatever it takes. I'm paying everybody back, the dealership, the buyer's deposit, the cards. Gonna take years, probably. But I already started." For the first time in weeks, I saw the boy I'd helped raise sitting there in front of me. Not because he'd fixed a single thing yet, because he'd finally quit hunting for a shortcut. "There's something else you should know," he said. "It wasn't all Brianna's idea." "What do you mean?" I asked. "I complained first," he admitted, "about money. Everybody our age seemed to have more than us." He looked around my plain kitchen. "You never cared about things like that," he said. "I did care," I told him. "I just cared about the right things." Brianna kept saying, "Your grandpa's just sitting on that old boat. He'll never even know. I should have walked away right then," he said. Wanted an easy answer instead. So I turned into exactly the kind of man I always swore I'd never be. Those words hurt, but they were honest, and honest hurts a whole lot less than a pretty lie does eventually. I got up, walked into the front room, and came back with an old photo off the mantel. Tyler, at 7 years old, in an oversized Little League jersey, front teeth missing, holding up a participation trophy like he'd won the World Series. I handed it over. "Remember this?" I asked. He smiled a little, faint. "You never missed a game," he said. "Tried not to," I told him. "You worked doubles," he said. "Still came," I said. "You know what I remember most?" he asked. I shook my head. "After every single game," he said, "you'd take me for ice cream." I laughed. "You always got chocolate," I said. "You always got butter pecan," he said. "Your grandmother hated butter pecan," I told him. "I know," he said. And we both laughed together for the first time in what felt like months. Then he did something I wasn't expecting. He stood up, came around the table, and hugged me. Not some quick, stiff handshake hug. He held on the way he used to as a little boy waiting at the window for my truck to come up the drive. "I'm sorry, Grandpa," he said, voice cracking clean apart. "I didn't just sell the boat. I sold every single thing you ever tried to teach me." "I know," I said. "You forgot them," I told him. "I chose to," he corrected me. "I can't ask you to forgive me. Haven't earned that, but I want to. I'll spend however long it takes proving I'm different." I believed he meant it, right then. Whether he could actually live it out day after day, only time was going to tell me that part. A week later, Renata called one last time. "Everything's officially closed out," she said. "No more legal exposure at all. I've practiced law better than 25 years, she added. "I've seen whole families come apart over a lot less than this." I looked out my window while she talked. Tyler was down at the marina, elbow deep in the bilge, changing the impeller pump without anybody asking him to. Grease clear up both forearms. He looked up and waved. I waved back. "Hope he doesn't waste this second chance," Renata said before she hung up. "So do I told her. Autumn rolled in, and my slip at the marina looked different than it had in years. Not because I'd bought anything new. Because every single Saturday morning, before I'd even finished my first cup of coffee, Tyler was already down there. Never showed up empty-handed either. One week it was new zincs for the hull, next week fresh fuel filters, then hose clamps for the raw water intake. None of it cost much. That was never really the point of any of it. He was showing up, week after week, without being asked, and without expecting a single word of praise for it. That's something money can't ever buy back once it's spent. One crisp Saturday, he crawled out from the engine compartment, face streaked with grease. "Think that's the last leak," he said. "You said that 3 Saturdays running," I told him. "I know," he said, "but I mean it this time. Old boats always got one more surprise hiding in them," I told him. "Guess that's true of families too," he said. And I looked at him and realized he wasn't joking around anymore. He'd finally understood trust doesn't come back on the strength of one good apology. It gets rebuilt one honest Saturday at a time. One afternoon, polishing the brass together, he asked me, "Why didn't you have me arrested, Grandpa?" I kept working the rag over that bell a few seconds before I answered. "Because prison would have just taught you to resent me." "What did you want to teach me instead?" he asked. "Responsibility," I told him. "I deserved consequences," he said. "You got them," I said. "You lost your girlfriend. You lost something bigger than that, too." "What?" he asked. I looked him dead in the eye. "You lost yourself for a while there." He lowered his head. "I know," he said quiet. A month after that, a small insurance check came through for minor repairs the dealership had covered while my boat sat in their care. Not much. Just enough to cover fuel for a long haul. Carol Ann always used to say the universe has a funny sense of timing. Maybe she was right about that too. That night I spread the old paper chart across my dining table. The real kind, not some app on a phone. I traced the whole route we'd dreamed up together, all those years back. Down through the Sounds, around the Outer Banks, south past Charleston, all the way to the Keys, then back up the Gulf side toward home. Better than 2,000 nautical miles, all told. I could almost hear Carol Ann laughing beside me. "You're trying to see the whole coastline in one trip again, aren't you?" Maybe I was. 2 days before I planned to shove off, Tyler stopped by with a small cardboard box. "Found this cleaning out the attic," he said. Inside were dozens of old photographs. Carol Ann teaching him to ride a bike. Our first camping trip up in the mountains. Christmases, birthdays, Little League games. One caught my eye, Carol Ann standing beside a channel marker somewhere down the coast. "When was this?" I asked. "I was 7, Tyler said. "We chartered a boat for one weekend. Remember?" I'd nearly forgotten. Carol Ann hadn't. On the back she'd written in her own hand, "One day we'll run the whole coast together." I slipped that photo into her logbook, right where it belonged. The morning I finally cast off, a handful of folks from around the marina gathered on the dock to see me away. Ed showed up with 2 travel mugs of coffee. "Figured you'd need this," he said. "I probably will," I told him. "Take your time out there," he said, and I told him I fully intended to. Renata stopped by on her way into the office, smiling at the boat. "You finally made it," she said. "Thanks to a good lawyer," I told her. "No," she said, shaking her head. "Thanks to a patient grandfather." Before I could answer, another truck pulled up. Tyler got out, looking nervous, walked over slow. "Wanted to ask you something?" he said. I already had a good idea what it was before he ever got it out. "Would it be all right," he asked, "if I came along for part of the trip?" I looked toward the empty seat beside the wheel, the one that should have had Carol Ann in it, then back at my grandson. "How long?" I asked. "Just a few days," he said. "Where to?" I asked. He named the very first stretch of coastline Carol Ann had circled in red ink all those years back. "Your grandmother always wanted you to see that stretch," I told him. "Found it written in one of her logbook pages," he said. eyes filling up. "Pack a bag," I told him, and his whole face lit up the way it used to when he was 9 years old. He hugged me before I even had the chance to change my mind. 3 days later, somewhere along that same red-circled stretch of coast, we cut the engine and drifted to watch the sun go down over the water. The old diesel ticked and cooled in the evening breeze. "It's beautiful out here," he said. "Glad I came," he added after a while. "One day," he said, "I'd like to bring my own kids out this way. When that day comes," I told him, resting a hand on his shoulder, "teach them one thing." "What's that?" he asked. "Dreams aren't measured by what they cost," I said. "They're measured by what they're worth. And don't you ever let money talk you into believing somebody else's dream is yours to sell." "I won't," he said. "I believe you," I told him, and for the first time in a long while, I actually meant every word of it. As the sun dropped below the tree line, I looked out over all that open water and understood something Carol Ann had been trying to tell me for years without ever quite saying it out loud. Memories don't live in a marina slip. They travel with the people who keep loving you. And sometimes the longest stretch of water only opens up once you've finally learned how to forgive. Here's the thing I keep circling back to, if I'm honest with you. The mistake most folks make watching a story like mine is thinking the lesson's about the boat, or the money, or even about Tyler. It isn't. The lesson is that trust takes years and years to build, and only a few careless seconds to spend clean through. And the people we love the most are exactly the ones capable of costing us the most, precisely because we're the ones who let our guard down for them in the first place. So here's something small you could actually go do today. Family, call the person you've been putting off a hard conversation with. Not to accuse them of a thing, just to ask one honest question, and actually wait around this time for the answer. And here's something to sit with a while longer than that. Is there somebody in your own life you've been quietly punishing instead of letting them lose it all on their own the way they need to? I'd genuinely like to know what you make of Tyler's choices in all this, family. So go on and drop a 1, a 2, or a 3 down in the comments right now. 1. If you think he deserved to lose everything and then some. 2. If you think what happened to him already was punishment enough. 3. If you're somewhere in between, same as I was for a good long while myself. And tell me where you're watching this from, and what time it is right where you're sitting. I always love seeing just how far these stories travel. And if any piece of this reminded you of something you've actually lived through yourself, whether you were the one who got hurt or the one who did the hurting, I'd truly like to hear that story too, if you're willing to share it with me. If stories like this one mean something to you, family, stick around here with me a while longer, because there's a lot more water left to cross.